Joining me right now is Pennsylvania Congressman. He is the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus and member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, Scott Perry. Congressman, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks very much. Can you walk us through what's going on with this potential rail strike? First, Joe Biden comes out in September, right before the midterm elections, and tries to make everybody believe that he's got some tentative agreement, which did not exist. And he did a whole press conference about it. We saw through it right away. Now he says he's not engaged.
Yeah, good morning, Maria. Of course, the President Biden and the Democrats keep telling us that just to sit tight, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Unfortunately, this light happens to be a rail strike that's going to amount to about a $2 billion loss in our economy every single day. If you think supply chains are bad now, just wait. And of course, what the rail workers have figured out is that money talks and BS walks. So, you know, while the president directly got engaged and averted a strike just in time for the midterm elections, it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case for Christmas. And of course, the political difference is that they care about midterm elections. They don't care whether you can get your child what he or she wants for Christmas, or whether you can buy stuff off the shelves at the grocery store. That's not an issue for the administration as they continue to crush the American people and crush this economy.
So, I mean, a week from Friday is when the first of these rail workers could actually go on the picket lines. 115,000 could strike a week from Friday. Do you think Congress will get involved to avert a strike, or will we see the rail strikers move ahead?
I think there's a good possibility that Congress will get involved. When I say Congress, of course, Nancy Pelosi remains the Speaker. Chuck Schumer remains the leader in the Senate, and that's not going to change for the next couple weeks. And so always interested to meddle and tamper with industry. The Democrats are likely going to do that. But here's what you know, Maria. The rail workers know that their prices for every single thing they buy are going up, and that their wages aren't keeping up with the inflation caused by Congress, caused by the Biden administration. And they want to make their ends meet like everybody else. So they're forcing the issue. And of course, all too willing to continue with government intervention. I suspect Speaker Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and President Biden are going to want to get involved and fix this for everybody. What this is going to mean to you is absolutely higher prices and potentially less things on your shelf than there are now. That's where we're headed at this moment.
Well, we've spoken with the heads of some of these unions. One union we spoke to rejected the deal. Another union head said that he would go along with it if he got more sick days. They're already getting a 24% increase in pay and benefits. But what the rail workers want is more paid sick leave. They were offered one sick leave paid. They want 15. So, I mean, that's, I think, where we stand right now. But in terms of Congress getting involved, what would that look like? Would the Congress say, look, you're forced to accept this deal, or you're forced to continue good faith negotiations? How does that play out?
I think how it would play out is they would try and force them to continue negotiations and then find some middle ground between the sick leave issue where the rail union wants it and where it currently is. And of course, neither side of that is going to give up on the opportunity that you can never let a crisis go to waste. They're going to get the best out of this crisis for themselves.
Absolutely.
Politically and financially.
And I would not write off other unions who are looking at this and saying, well, the rail workers are getting a 24% raise. I want that kind of a raise, so maybe I'll threaten a strike. But I want to talk about leadership. You just mentioned the Democrat leadership. Let's talk about the Republican leadership. You are on the Freedom Caucus. Kevin McCarthy facing a floor fight to determine who will be the next speaker. The House Freedom Caucus having a big say in this matter. Kevin McCarthy was here a few weeks ago on Sunday Morning Futures, and here's what he said. I want to get your take on this.
The discussion, it wasn't about me, it was the process and the rules in the House. I have opened up the rules even greater than we've ever before, changed the steering committee where the power rests with the conference themselves to make that decision. They have more power than the leadership ever had in the past. And really, we're walking through rules next week as well. I kept that open. So if the argument is about the rules of the House, let collectively the conference make that decision.
So, Congressman, Congressman, what's your response? Is that what you are talking about, the rules?
Well, Maria, I would respond this way. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing with the same people under the same process and expecting a different outcome. We're all disappointed in what happened in the Senate leadership, and we don't want to make the same mistake in the House of Representatives. We want to see things actually change for the better in America. People send their representatives to Washington, D.C. to make that happen, and they don't care about these rules or process changes. I get that. They want to see transformational change in Congress so that people represent their district. We don't have this illusion of representative government. So nibbling around the edges, unfortunately, probably not going to be good enough. We're talking about things that really make a difference, that they get rid of the pay for play and make sure that people can go to Washington, D.C. and represent their districts, represent the problems in the country, and make a difference for people in their lives at home where they exist. Right now, that's not where we are.
So are you a no vote on Kevin McCarthy, and do you want to see Andy Biggs as Speaker?
I want to see anybody that's going to be Speaker that's actually going to recognize that things need to change in Congress. For 40 years, we've had this top-down, cram-down of you got to do what leadership says. Leadership picks all the committee chairmen. Leadership decides what votes make it to the floor, what amendments. There hasn't been an amendment on the floor in 6 years, Maria. How do you represent your districts when you don't serve on a committee and can't offer an amendment on the floor when a bill out of that committee makes it to the floor and affects the people that you represent? You simply cannot. Those things absolutely need to change. We need to see a different look. And if it means different personnel, that's what it's going to have to look like. But we have been in these discussions since summertime, and nothing really more. It's nibbling around the edges. That's simply not going to do.
Real quick, Congressman, when are we going to see clarity on this? How will this play out in the coming weeks?
Well, I think there's going to continue to be talks and negotiations. But as you know, Maria, 5 members have already come out and said they will not vote for Leader McCarthy for Speaker. At some point, either they're going to change their minds or he's going to change his mind. And I don't know where that is right now. So I think negotiations will continue for a little while. But I think unless there's something big that happens, we're either headed for a floor fight or somebody's going to have to give. And I don't see the 5 members who have publicly come out changing their minds, at least under the current conditions right now.
All right, we will leave it there. Congressman, it's great to talk with you this morning. Thanks very much. Scott Perry joining us this morning in Pennsylvania. Thank you, sir. We'll be right back. Stay with us.